Hi all, a very good morning. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. I'm just waiting for the presenter access so that I'll be able to present the screen. Hi all, a very good morning. So I hope you guys are also able to see the screen now. Okay. So in the last class of our lab, we were able to discuss on the volumes and snapshots in detail. And today we are going to look at what is instance metadata and then the placement groups and IAM user and the role with the EC2 instances. So these are the topics that we are going to pick up for the day. So let's quickly go ahead and launch one of the EC2 instance and then look what is instance metadata. So while this sign-in is being in progress, so what is metadata? So metadata is basically the data about data. Now, if you consider a small example of this file, if I go ahead and right click and say properties, basically it gives me information on what kind of file it is. It's Excel sheet file and it is stored at so and so location. It has got so and so size and it was created on so and so date. Right? So it gives me all the specific details about the file. This is nothing but a metadata. So metadata is nothing but data about the data. Similarly, what we are going to do is whenever we launch a EC2 instance, remember we learned about the first tab. When we go to the instance dashboard, we are able, when we select the instance, we'll be able to see the descriptional properties of our EC2 instance. That is nothing but metadata. Now, if you're already inside a EC2 instance, how do you specifically get any of these parameters if I want to access? Right? So that is about something that we're going to learn through. That is instance metadata. So there we go. I'm into my AWS. I'll quickly navigate to the services and then go to EC2. I'll quickly go ahead and launch my EC2 instance. So I'm going to select Amazon Linux AMI. And then next configure the instance details. We are just going to set the T2 micro in the last screen, and in here I'm going to leave everything at default. I'll quickly go ahead and add storage. It's going to be 8 GB in size for the root volume with general purpose SSD GB2 type. Add the tags. Just go ahead and say name, metadata lab. I'm going to put it across web server group, which has got HTTP protocols, and SSH group, which has got port number 22 opened up. I'll quickly go ahead and review and launch it. Click on launch, and I'm going to use my existing key pairs that we created a couple of days back. There's Virginia key pair. And this is going to launch an instance. We'll just wait for a while for this instance to be up and running. So there we go. We have got the public IP address. Let's quickly pick up this one, and I'll open up my party terminal to log in into this EC2 instance. I also update the font size so that it is better for our visibility. This Virginia key pair. This is the public IP address. We have the security group opened up. Okay, this is because the IP address has been locked down here. So IP address usually keeps changing. Let's go down to security groups. And let's go ahead and edit it. There we go. My IP address has changed. There you go. It allows me to access it. So the part of security group labs really help in here, right? So any changes done to the security group, the changes are going to take effect immediately. So I'll go ahead and say verify my key fingerprint as yes, and I'm going to go ahead and log in into this EC2 instance with the name of user EC2- user. And the very first thing that I'm going to do across here is elevate my privileges. Okay, so now we were talking about the instance metadata. Like, let's say I want to get some of these parameters to be accessible when I'm inside the EC2 instance. It could be something like instance ID, it could be something like public DNS name, it could be something like my AMI ID, right? Maybe I just want to go ahead and store these details. So how do I get it? So it's very simple. When we talk about the instance metadata, we have one small link that we need to remember across. So the link is basically about this one. I'll just go down here. The link is http://169.254.169.254/ latest slash meta hyphen data, right? So this is the link that we have to specifically remember. But now how do we basically access the link when we are in the command line? So we have a command with the name curl, that is called as curl command, we call it as, or you call it as curl, and then you just have to go ahead and put across this link here, and then just click and then just put slash at last and say enter. Then it's going to show you what all parameters are basically available for this EC2 instance to be accessible. Now remember, this URL is going to work only inside the specific instance. So if I go ahead and copy this one and just say that I want to put it across in the browser, it is not going to work for you, right? So this specific URL works only inside the specific any EC2 instance. You can put it across. It is going to help you with the parameters. So in our case here, if you see, I'm now able to find out the parameters for AMI ID, AMI launch index, AMI manifest path, block device mapping, host name, instance action, instance ID, metrics, network placement, a lot of different things are there, right? Let's say I want to find out something like AMI ID. So I'll just copy the AMI ID and I'll just click the up arrow on my keyboard, and again the same URL will start appearing. At last, just go ahead and add the AMI ID and then just say enter. There we go. So AMI ID is now available here. It says 55EF662F. Let's go ahead and verify it. It is 55EF662F, right? So we were able to get the AMI ID. Similarly, let's say I want to find out something about security groups. I'll remove the AMI ID from here. Then say enter. So there you go. It says it has got two security groups. One of them is the name web server, second is with the name SSHSG, right? So with this help of instance metadata, I'll be able to find out some of the description properties of the EC2 instance while I am inside the virtual machine. Specifically, you have to remember this URL, which is being asked in the interview as well as in the exams most of the times. What is the URL which actually helps us to access the instance metadata? So it's very easy to remember. Just 169.254, which is smallest number followed by the largest number. 169.254.169.254 slash latest slash meta hyphen data. So this is a URL that will actually help us to get the data. So you may try out some of more parameters here. Let's say I want to go for the metrics. Right. So wherever you see the slash, which means it has more parameters. So I'll have to just go and say here metrics slash vhost md. There we go. So it is basically giving me some information here. The XML version and the encoding is being represented here. So any questions or queries from any one of you on the instance metadata part of the lab? How about Rahul and Kirti? Are you guys able to follow it up? It does sometimes happen that I would like to store some of the profile details. Like let's say I would like to store the public IPv4 details in one of my notepad file, in one of my files, and I want to send it across to some other server, right? So when we're trying to communicate, or maybe I would also require sometimes what are the some of the parameters are usually required at while the time we are trying to process the data. So at that times we will be basically making use of this instance metadata so that we will be able to put across. Now to give you a more specific example here, I'll give you this one. Now in this we have local IPv4. This is the local IP address, that is 172.31.49.79. Yeah, so this is the private IP address. So specifically when we are in the VPC, when we are communicating one instance with the other one, we specifically require this IP address of the instance to be passed across to some other, right? So that is the easiest way to help us through. And let's say if I'm trying to put the logs of this EC2 instance into S3 bucket, let's say I have some custom logs, then and I have got hundreds of EC2 instances. How do I identify that which log has come from which one of them? So specifically I can use the instance ID here, because instance ID is going to be unique. So I can use the instance ID as the name of the file, name of the text file itself, where I'm going to put the data inside it, and I'm going to store the logs here, and then the same logs will be actually sent to the S3 bucket as such, right? So that actually helps me to easily identify the logs have come from which specific server. And sometimes in order to debug the code as well, or some where we have some secret keys and access keys that we are going to learn a little next couple of labs, where we are going to learn about it. All those can be basically checked out here. Yes, that is same for all the instances. 169.254.169.254 is same across all the EC2 instance. Any instance you launch, whether it is a Windows or whether it is a Linux, you can just go ahead and use this URL in the command prompt or terminal, and then you will be able to retrieve the properties of that specific EC2 instance. Okay, so the next part of our topic is about placement groups. Now, placement groups is about a little theory topic. So let's go ahead and just pick up one of the slides. Yeah, in regard to the instance metadata, the best example would be the one that I just gave. Like, let's say I want to send the logs of hundreds of different EC2 instances to S3 bucket, and from the S3 bucket, I'm just sending it to the Splunk. Okay, so now how do I identify that I am getting the log from specific correct instance in the Splunk? So if I have to identify that this EC2 instance, which is hosting a web server and which is of a Linux box and which is the instance ID so and so, is basically giving me errors. So in the Splunk, I'll be basically able to monitor the complete application. So, but I have to send the logs before I can visualize it. So specifically when we are sending the logs, before that, what I can do is I try to save the name of the file with the help of instance metadata, where I just retrieved the instance ID. If you see in the last right? So this is the instance ID, which is unique across. Like let's say if I got hundreds of EC2 instances, then specifically I'll just use this instance ID as the name of the file, or maybe at the start of the file, I'll just use this name so that whenever I'm passing these parameters to the Splunk, I'll just ask it to create with the visualization of the logs with the help of this ID. So in those cases, it is basically helpful. And sometimes I may also need the IP address of these machines in order to configure some softwares, right? So at that time as well, these instance metadata can be used. Now, the next part is basically the placement groups. Placement groups, as I just said, is a theory topic that we just need to understand why we use it. Now, placement group is a logical grouping of instances within single availability zone. Using placement groups enables application to participate in low latency 10 Gbps network. Placement groups are recommended for applications that share from low network latency and high network throughput, or both. Now, when we talk about the placement groups, it is basically virtually combining the instances in a single availability zone. Remember, I'll be able to combine the instances only in a single availability zone. Now, why do we use it? Specifically, whenever I want to achieve low network latency and high network throughput, like let's say I have two EC2 instances in the same availability zone, and one of the EC2 instances is being heavily used while the other is not at all used. Okay, so if I want to leverage the network throughput of both of them at the same time, I can go ahead and actually put them into a placement group. So combined together, I'll be able to get the throughput and I'll be able to play around with it, right? So placement group is more about virtually combining the instances so that I get a high network throughput, and then I'll be able to sustain the amount of traffic that is actually coming through. As well, I'll be able to deliver back at a very faster response as well. So using the placement groups basically enable the applications to participate in low latency 10 Gbps network, right? So I can extend my network up to more of up to 10 Gbps of the speed, right? So that is what we can do with a placement group. Remember, placement groups is basically about virtually or logically grouping the EC2 instances. Yes, we are going to group instances itself. So logically grouping the virtual machines in a single availability zone in order to achieve low network latency and high network throughput. But before we create the placement group, there are certain rules to be followed. So let's look at what are those rules. The first one is a placement group cannot span multiple availability zones. So when you want to virtually combine a couple of instances, and if they are part of different availability zones, then you will not be able to do it across. You have to ensure that all your EC2 instances are in a part of single availability zone, and they are going to be virtually combined up. The next one is the name you specify for the placement group must be unique within your AWS account. So whatever name we are going to propose for our placement group, it should be unique across the AWS account. It is same like a S3 bucket. I cannot have one of the placement group names that is already been picked up by someone else. Next, we have only certain types of instances can be launched in the placement group. Now, it's not possible for everything, right? If we have been doing the labs for all the T2 micro machines, so we do not see any option of placement group while we were creating it. So let me show you when that option comes up. Let's go ahead and select Amazon Linux AMI, and maybe I'll just go ahead and select the machine with the compute C5X large, let's say. Here, if you see, I'm able to check out the placement group in the part 3 or the step 3 of the EC2 launch, right? So it specifically gives me if you would like to add this EC2 instance to a placement group. Right? This is a place I'll be able to check through. And that's the reason it says that the only certain types of instances can be launched in a placement group. Not all of them are available. It's only available for few of them. So in few of them it is compute optimized, GPU, memory optimized, and the storage optimized. So these are the four different types of instances on which I'll be able to implement this placement groups methodology. And the next is AWS recommends homogeneous instances within placement groups. Now, what does homogeneous instance mean? Homogeneous instance basically mean the instance should be of same size and the same type. So if I have got one machine with C5 large and second machine with R3 large, let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Yeah, let's say if I have got one machine with C5 large and second machine with, let's say, F1 large, then I'll not be able to get a required output in terms of the placement groups. Placement groups specifically work very well when I have the machines of same type and same size, which means if I have one machine with compute optimized, which is with C5 large, which has got 2 virtual cores of CPU and 4 GB of RAM, then I should also have the other machine with the same configuration. Then the placement groups actually work very well in order to provide me the high network bandwidth and the low network latency. So Amazon always recommends that you have the instances of the homogeneous type, which means it should be of the same size and the same type as well. So if it is C5 large, it should be C5 large itself, and it is of having 8 GB. If it is having 2 virtual cores of CPU and 4 GB of RAM, the same should be the case with the other one as well. So it recommends always to be having the homogeneous instances. And you cannot merge the placement group. So if I have got two different placement groups and if I plan to merge them up, we cannot do it. And why will not be able to merge the placement groups? There is one reason behind it. So you cannot add an existing instance into a placement group. So if you think you already have an EC2 instance which is running and you want to add it to a placement group, no, you cannot add an existing instance into a placement group. You can add the instance to a placement group only while it is being launched. So when we are launching, I just showed you up here as we see. So when I'm trying to launch the EC2 instance, that is the only time when I get to see this placement group option. So after the instance is being launched, I'll not be able to add it to the placement group. Now, if you want to add the existing running EC2 instance to a placement group, how do we do it? Specifically, we have to take an image of existing machine and then we'll be able to put it across into the placement group. So we are going to learn about the machine image creation in the next part of our lab, which is coming up. So machine image is basically something like this, what we have been using AMI, like Amazon Linux AMI. Similarly, we can create our own image as such, right? So if your EC2 instance is already running and if you want to keep it into a placement group, so you have to first create an image out of it, and that image will start appearing in here in the my AMIs, and using this image again launch a new EC2 instance, and then you will be able to select the placement group finally here. So those are the basic rules that we need to follow for the placement groups part. So any questions here on the placement group section? No, we don't have the lab as such for this moment of time, because it basically requires all the large machines to be launched through, and it is really just important to understand what we can achieve with the placement group, because to practically showcase, we may have to just first create a load of heavy load onto those machines, and then when we put it into the placement groups, then we'll be able to check through how it is actually helping in. Yes, we do use it in the real time for the clients. So basically what they do is whenever we are trying to build highly available architectures, in terms highly available means I'm trying to deploy my instances in the two different availability zones. So that case we'll be able to understand when we get to this specific section, that is load balancer. So once you come down to the load balancer and the auto scaling part, it will be much more easier to understand the rest of the part of the things. Yeah, in terms of exam tips, there is one question that usually comes up onto the placement groups. So specifically, the question would be something like the scenario based, in which scenario he'll say that I have got a couple of instances which are of the size and the type like this. He'll not mention that they're of same size. He'll just try to confuse you on this question. He'll just say that I have got a couple of instances and they are of type C5 large, and they are a part of this availability, and they are launched in the availability zone so and so in the same so and so region. And there is some problem with the one of the EC2 instance due to the heavy load or something as such, and what could be the best way in which I'll be able to improve the situation here, right? So or in that moment of time, you can just think about the placement groups where all the conditions are specifically satisfying, where the machine is of C5 large, it is actually part of the single availability zone, and they are basically homogeneous. And then with the help of placement groups, we'll be able to improve the situation. Yeah, as I said, Rahul, maybe when we come down to the load balancer part, I'll just look back at placement groups to help you give a better example, because if you guys will be able to understand what is a load balancer, what is auto scaling, and how do we basically build highly available architectures, that is when you will be able to get a much more clearer picture about the placement groups. So for now, just understand that the placement groups are helpful in order to virtually group the instances, and then I'll be able to leverage the usage of both the machines. Like if this CPU is unutilized, I'll be able to utilize the CPU of the other VM, and put together, I'll be able to improve the performance of the application. So any more questions on the placement group part from any one of you? Okay, just a minute. We may use that for the ELB, but not specifically. Yeah, I'll surely explain the scenario that will give you a clear picture how we can use it across. So when we talk about the highly available architectures, how can we say that Flipkart.com is highly available? Because there's no downtime, right? So what happens if the servers go down, but still the Flipkart.com is available? How is it being maintained, right? So how are these web servers being maintained at a 24/7 architecture without any downtime? So we are going to learn about those highly available architectures, and then we'll be able to easily get the understand the place usage of the placement groups behind the scene as well. The next part of the lab is about IAM user role with the EC2 instances and the command line. So these are the three things that work together hand in hand. Now we have looked into the IAM section of our course, where we learned how to create the users, how to create the roles. Now let's say if my EC2 instance wants to talk to S3 bucket, so how do I ensure that it can securely establish a connection between the EC2 and the S3? So in order to secure the connection, I'll be using the roles, as well as I can also use the users. So let's see which one of them is better and how does it put up a solution here. Now we are already inside one of the EC2 instance here. I'll just go ahead and clear the screen. Okay, now if I want to establish a connection with the S3, since it is a AWS service, I just have to type AWS and then just say S3 and then just say ls. Ls is basically a Linux command which actually helps us to list out all the files and the directories inside this specific path where we are, right? So I'm currently in the EC2-user. So if I just say ls, I do not have anything here. I'll just go to cd dot And if I say ls here, you see I am able to list out all the directories and the files that are there inside this specific path. Similarly, if I have to check out something in the S3 bucket, what all buckets are available, I'll just say AWS S3 and then say ls. But it says it is unable to locate the credentials and you have to configure the credentials. Basically, EC2 instance doesn't have direct access to the S3 bucket. We specifically need either a user ID and password with the help of which we are able to connect to this S3, or we may use something like roles which helps us to securely connect the EC2 instance with the S3 bucket. So let's see how I can do it. So first we are going to learn about user part. So I'll just navigate to the IAM section. There we go. I'll just quickly go down to the users part. So remember, whenever in the IAM we create a user, there are two different ways of access that we get. One is console access, which has got user ID and password, and second is programmatic access, where we get this access key and the secret access key, right? So this is the place where we are going to learn how to connect using the command line to the any of the AWS services, but specifically here we are talking about the S3 service where we are going to connect to. Now let's say I will go ahead and add user, and the name of the user will be S3 test user, and he is going to be given programmatic access because we are going to connect from inside a EC2 instance to our S3 bucket, and we are going to specifically use the command line interface. I'll just go down and then click on next permissions. So if you already have a group which has got S3 access, you can straight away attach the user to this group, or you can also copy the permissions from existing users if you have already got, or you can also directly attach a policy document to this user. So let's say I want to directly attach the policy document. I'll just say S3. Now I'll be able to get the policy name with the Amazon S3 full access. I'll just click on this and scroll down and then come to the next review. So there we go. We have successfully been able to create a user with the S3 test user, which has got programmatic access, that is using the access key and a secret access key, and he is going to get this specific permission document attached, that is Amazon S3 full access. Finally, I'm just going to go ahead and say create user. So there we go. Successfully we have been able to create it, and I have got access key and secret access key. Remember, this is the first and the last time you are able to see this secret access key here. So you have to specifically go ahead and make a copy of this. I'll just copy all these three and put it across in my notepad. So this is my user, this is my access key, and this is the secret access key. I'll just remove the hide button. Okay, so now that we have copied, I can quickly go ahead and close this. Now coming back to our EC2 instance, where it was asking that I have to basically run AWS configure in order to establish a connection with the S3 bucket. So let's say I'll go ahead and configure AWS configure. So remember, now it is going to ask you the access key ID. So let's go ahead and copy the access key ID. So this is my access key ID here. And then we have a secret access key. And it's going to ask you the default region name. So currently we are working out from the North Virginia, so it is going to be US East 1. So I'll just say US. And output format, I'll just leave it blank and just click enter key. So it'll go to the next step. So now we have been successfully able to configure the access key, secret access key, and the default region name. And this access key and the secret access key is of a specific user with the name S3 test user, right? And this S3 test user basically has got access to the full access to the S3. Now let's say again I go back and say AWS S3 and say ls. You see, I'm able to get through the list of all the buckets which are available in my AWS account. So I have got a bucket with the name AWS CloudFront Lab. I have got AWS Training 2020, AWS Training 2018, 2018 Backup, 2019, and the AWS Training Backup, and some more buckets. So let's say if I want to go ahead and check out one of the bucket here, AWS CloudFront Lab. So it's basically going to show me what all contents are available inside this bucket. So I have got 3 images, one with the name walker.jpg and some randomly generated number, and there is a file with this specific name across here. Right, so this is how we configure the user, and with the help of user we'll be able to actually navigate to the section of the RS3, and then we'll be able to check out what is available from the command line. Now let's say we have a requirement to transfer some files from my EC2 instance to the S3 bucket, or from the S3 bucket to the EC2 instance. So how do we specifically do it? So there are some commands. Let's go ahead and quickly learn about those commands on how we now that we have established a connection, let's see how I can copy the files, how I can move the files from one place to other. So I'll just go down to my Google and then let's say AWS and S3 and EC2. So there's one first document that you're going to get through here. Just go ahead and open this. So in this document, when I scroll down, so there are some examples that have been given up. So the first example is about get or wget command. Now with the help of wget command, what can we do? Let's say I have to download some file from some URL. Let's say you're downloading the songs in your Windows laptop or computer. So how do we do it? Specifically, you'll visit some website, and there you will be able to see the download button, and when you click on the download, automatically it starts downloading the file to your computer. Specifically, that file is placed somewhere on some server, right, from where you're able to download it. So if you have that specific link, directly you can pass that link here and then just put wget command before it, and you will be able to get the content. Now let's say I want to download the file for WordPress installation file for Linux. I'll just directly go to wordpress.org. Okay, I'll just give you one more example in here. Specifically, we'll be able to check out for. Okay, I already have the path here. Let's go ahead and pick it up. So this is the file of setup for the WordPress. So if I just go ahead in the Windows laptop and just say like this, it is specifically going to download the file directly here, right? Similarly, let's say if I want to download some file inside the Linux box, how do we do it? So we have got this wget command, and then if I go ahead and paste this link from where I have to download, just put it across, and it will be able to easily help you download the file to your EC2 instance. The wget command basically helps us to download any of the object from the web. Now, when we were talking about the S3 and the EC2, let's go down to the next part. Now that you have downloaded that file, let's say you want to transfer that file to the S3 bucket. How do you transfer it from the EC2 instance to the S3 bucket? So it's very simple. I'm again going to make use of a couple of Linux commands. That is, if you remember CP, that is for basically copying the files from one destination to other in the Linux. So I'm going to just add across a couple of more things before I can use a CP command. I'll just say I want to use this command for the AWS services, and the service that I want to use across is S3, and I would like to copy some things here. So if I want to copy something from my S3 bucket, then just give the S3 colon double slash and then the name of bucket and then the name of the folder and then the name of file, and then you can straight away give the name of the file that with which you want to store in the your machine. So let's first get. So I'll just go to S3 bucket from here. I'll just open up one of the S3 bucket and we are going to copy the file from the S3 bucket. So first we'll learn how to download the content from the S3 bucket. Then we'll learn how to upload the content back from my EC2 to S3. Okay, so let's pick up any one of this bucket here. Maybe the AWS CloudFront Lab. I'll just go ahead and pick it up. And let's say there is an image with the name walker.jpg, which I want to specifically transfer it across. So what would I do? I'll just say AWS S3 CP, and then the name of bucket is S3 colon double slash, and the name of bucket is AWS CloudFront Lab. Right, and the name of the file here is basically walker.jpg, and the same file I would like to get copied into my local machine on the same path where I am at this moment. So I'll just say walker.jpg is going to be the name of the file itself, and then just say enter. There we go. It has actually downloaded the file in here. If I just say ls, I'm able to see the file with the name walker.jpg, which is now available inside my EC2 instance. So what did I do? I specifically downloaded the file from the S3 bucket to my EC2. Now let's say I want to send this file latest.tar.gz to S3 bucket. So how do we do it across? So similarly, just reverse the command. So in case if you are writing, in the first step, we wrote a command where we're trying to download from S3 bucket. So the source will be first and then the destination. Now just reversing the objects here. So AWS S3 CP and then the file and then the place where you want to send it across. So let's go ahead and do it. AWS S3 CP, and then the name of the file here is latest.tar.gz, and this file I'm going to send it across to the bucket with the name AWS CloudFront Lab, and then what is the name of the file that is going to be there as well. So I'll just keep it with the same name, that is with the latest .gz itself, and then just quickly go ahead and enter. There we go. It is successfully trying to upload the file there. There it is, done. I'll just go back to the S3 bucket and see if the file has come back. I'll just refresh the screen here. So there we go. I'm able to see that the file of size 9.2 MB has been successfully created exactly at 8 hours 17 minutes, which is exactly matching to my time box. And the file name is latest.tar.gz. So with this, we are successfully able to upload the files from my S3 bucket to the EC2 instance, and from the EC2 instance to the S3 bucket. Now let's see what else is there in this documentation. Now, if I have to copy the files every time, it will be very difficult for me, right? So let's say I want to copy out all the files from this S3 bucket. Like this S3 bucket has got 4 files and I want to copy all of them at one shot. Or I already have got one of the file and I just want to copy other 3 files. Can we do any automation so that automatically the other 3 files get downloaded and the first file is remaining in my system as is? Let's try to do it. So what I'll try to do is I'll first try to create one folder for me. I'll just say mkdir pawan, and inside this, let's go and navigate to this folder. I'll just say pwd so that I'll just recheck that where we are. Okay, we are into the /pawan now, and inside this, if I say ls, I do not have anything. So let's go ahead and clear the screen. First thing is I'm going to go ahead and download one file from the S3 bucket. Okay, so let's first go ahead and download this file, that is with the name walker.jpg. Successfully, I have been able to download the walker.jpg to the Pawan folder. If I say ls, you'll be able to see that walker.jpg already exists. Now, if I want to sync my S3 bucket with the local folder, like I already have got walker.jpg, but I just need to go ahead and copy the other 3 files. So it's very simple. I'll just use the sync command, aws s3 sync. So with which you want to sync, like what is the source? So here the source is going to be s3:/aws CloudFront Lab, right? From this bucket, I'm specifically planning to sync to my local folder, right? So the local directory where you want to sync it across. So CloudFront Lab, one sec, and I'm going to sync it across to the /pawan. There you see, automatically it has been downloading all the files which are not available in my local directory, right? So it has downloaded 3 files. Let's go ahead and say ls. Okay, since the name here is with capital W, so it has actually created 2 different copies for the walker.jpg, or else it would not have created, right? So that is the reason there are 2 different copies of the file here, or else the sync specifically works clear. Let's try to delete one of this image here and then again try to sync it. I'll try to delete the capital walker.jpg. Now if I say ls, you see there are only 4 files. Now again I'm going to go ahead and run the sync. You see only the 1 file is going to get downloaded. Rest of the 3 files are already existing in my local bucket, right? So with the help of sync command, it gives me a relief of copying the only 1 file direct. So if I have to copy multiple files, and if it is like complete entire bucket or complete entire folder, and I already have few files which are existing, then how do we specifically sync it? This is how we can do it across. Yes, it's bidirectional. So if you see out here, it's bidirectional. I can use it local directory to this one, or from this to this. It is bidirectional. So let's go ahead and create one file here. I'll just say nano index.html. This is a index file. So ls, I'll just go ahead and reverse the command. There we go, right? So it is successfully uploaded a couple of files which were not existing in the S3 bucket. So if you see in the S3 bucket what were not existing, currently I have 4 files, but here I have got some 6 files. One is with the walker.jpg which has got small w, and then the index.html which are created extra here. And now if I'm going to go ahead and refresh the screen, you will be able to see that although other 2 files are also available here. Right, so the walker.jpg and the index.html, both the files are available. So it's bidirectional. You can play around with this all the way. Now let's say I have deleted the index.html file here. So rm is basically to remove, and rf is basically to remove forcibly. So I'm going to remove the file with the name index.html, and now I'm going to go ahead and create one more file with the name nano training.txt. So I'm going to create some sample text file. This is a sample text file. Now if I say ls, again I have got 6 files, but I have got removed my index.html file, but training.txt file is existing. Now let's say I want to again sync back my local directory with the S3 bucket, but I should also ensure that in the bucket also all the deletes get updated. So whatever file is being deleted from my local folder, the same should also get reflected in the S3 bucket. So how do we do it? So I'll just go ahead and run the same command, but here I'll just say minus minus delete. So there is one parameter called minus minus delete, which is basically going to help you to get the files deleted in the destination as well, right? But before that, you can also do a dry run. Let's say if you want to just check out what this specific command is going to do, so you can do a dry run before this command. So if I go ahead and click enter, so it says that if I run this command, it is basically going to delete one of the file from the S3 bucket, which is the name index.html, and it is going to upload one of the file with the name training.txt. Right, so initially we had the index.html file, which we have actually deleted it here, and then we created one other file with the name training.txt. So now exactly there are 6 files in my local EC2 instance, and now if I want to transfer all these 6 files, but 5 of the files already exist, but I want to sync in such a way that the index.html also gets deleted from the S3 bucket. So there is this parameter called as minus minus delete, which is going to help us with it. Now if I am going to remove the dry run, I'll then click enter. So it is actually going to delete one of the file and upload one of the other file. Now let's go back to S3 bucket to verify it. So already I have got 6 files, but I have not refreshed the screen yet. Let's go ahead and refresh it. You see the index.html has been replaced with the training.txt. Again, I just have got the 6 files here. So any questions here on the part of the AWS S3 command line interface? Any questions from any one of you? Divya, Kirti, Rahul, Shiva on the command line interface part? Okay, to schedule the job specifically, we have in the Linux something called as cron tab. Cron tab is basically a place where I can actually schedule all the things. Now, how do I go to cron tab? Just come down to the cd/etc. So if I go inside the etc and say ls, here we have something called as cron tab. So I'll just go inside this nano and then just say cron tab. So here you can see how can I schedule a job, right? So specifically it is asking me whether this job should be running every day, every hour, every month, every day of the week. So you can set out all these parameters first. So this is how the command will be written. So you can set up all these parameters, and then who has the authority to run this command. So most of the time we use the root users, or you can specify the name of the user who has got the authority to run some commands inside this machine, right? So if I have a root user, I'll just say root and then the name of the command to be executed. So whatever command we have just written now, S3 AWS S3 CP or AWS S3 sync, and then the source and the destination, and it is going to be executed every time. Now when we are actually using the user in this case, right? So we actually created a user in the IAM section, and then we were able to sure, I will do one thing. I'll also share this specific link, which actually helps into give access to what all can be done. What are the major important things that we basically do from EC2 instance to the S3 bucket. So I'll just put it across here. I'll also put it up across in this. I'll also share this notepad in which we have written a lot of commands or a lot of information is there. So I'll also put up across this notepad so that you guys will be able to view it. Sure, I'll just try to make up a single document where we can put across all the situations. Okay, so we were discussing about the IAM user part. Then what is role? Now when we created an IAM user, we specifically created the access key and the secret access key. Now if someone really knows the AWS better, or if someone really knows how to work around with a Linux machine, okay, so he will be able to figure out something in this. Let me show you what is that. So I'll just say CD and then it did say tilde. So this symbol is basically called as tilde, and then just say enter. And now I am inside this tilde directory. Let's say I would just go back and say ls -a. So when I say -a, it is basically going to list out all the hidden directories inside this specific path. So if you see, there is one small directory with the name .aws. If I just say ls, I'll not be able to see anything. But if I say ls -a, I'll be able to see all the hidden files inside this specific path. So where we are at this moment of time, we are inside this /root, and we'll be able to look out all the hidden directories. Now if I go inside this hidden directory with the name .aws, let's see what is there in it. cd, I'll just say .aws. So I'm changing my directory to .aws, and now I'll just say ls. You see there are two files with the name config and the credentials. So if I go inside the credentials, I'll just say cat credentials. You see, I'm able to get the access key ID and the secret access key, which is being stored inside this EC2 instance at so and so location, right? So if someone really knows Linux box or AWS very well, and then they determine that in your EC2 instance you're actually trying to use a configuration for one of the IAM user in order to access the S3 buckets, then they will be able to easily determine this access key and the secret access key. Now, if I get a hold of this access key and the secret access key, I'll be able to easily navigate to someone's Amazon account and download everything from their S3 bucket. So that's why they say that user is not a specific choice in order to help and access with the S3 bucket. So specifically, we are going to learn how to create a role, and roles are helping us to establish a secure connection between the EC2 instance and the S3 bucket. Now, let's say I'll go back in one folder, And if I say ls minus a again, I have the .aws folder. So I'm completely going to delete this .aws folder itself from here. So let's go ahead and delete it. So I'll just say rm minus rf, and the name of the folder is .aws. And if I say ls minus a, now you see the .aws folder itself is gone. So if I go ahead and say aws s3 and say ls, it is going to again give me the same error saying that there are no credentials which are available. You need to start again with the AWS configure. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly create a role, and that role we are going to go ahead and assign it to our EC2 instance so that we'll be able to securely access the services. So let's go down to the IAM service here again. One sec. Okay, I just got a call in between. Okay, so we'll quickly go ahead and create one of the role here. I'll click on the roles. I'll click on create role, and this role is basically going to be applied to my one of the AWS services, right? So what is the AWS service that I'm going to get it applied to? That is EC2 instance. And in the EC2 instance, I'm going to pick up this one, that is EC2, and I'm going to go down, scroll it, and then just say next. So it's going to ask me what is the permission that you're going to give this EC2 instance. So I'm going to give S3 full access. So I'll just type S3 here, and I'll just select this policy document, that is S3 full access, and then I'll just say next review. So it is asking me to give the name here. So I'll just say access S3 EC2. So I'll just put in here allows EC2 instances securely connect to S3 bucket. And then scroll down the page. So here you can also review what we have done. So specifically we are trusting EC2 instances, and then we are going to give them full access to the S3 buckets. I'll go and say create role here. So it's taking a little while to create it. There we go. Our role is created with the name AWS access S3 EC2. So what did we do? We are trusting EC2 section, and then we are going to give them a full access to our S3. Now let's come back to the EC2 section. This is my EC2 instance. And in the actions, if I go ahead and check out on the instance settings, I have an option to attach or replace IAM role. So if I go ahead and click on this, it gives me an option to apply the role for this specific EC2 instance. So what is the role that we have just created? It is access S3 EC2, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply this role here. Right, so I have been successfully able to apply the role. Now if I come back to EC2 instance, remember we have actually deleted .aws folder, so it was unable to connect at the last stage. That is, if I say AWS S3 LS, it was unable to connect. Let me show you again. If I say ls minus a, I don't have any .aws folder itself. But now if I go ahead and give AWS S3 LS, it is able to list down all the buckets, right? But however, I do not have anything called as .aws, which has actually got all the, earlier it was storing all the credentials, right? So I do not have anything as such at this moment of time, and I'm able to securely access all the S3 buckets. Now I'll be able to do the same things that what we did some time back. I'll be able to send the data from any one of the bucket to my local EC2 instance, and from my local EC2 instance to the S3 bucket as well. So this is the major difference between the users and the roles. So always try to use the roles whenever you want to securely establish connection between any of the two services in the AWS. So any questions or doubts before we close for the day? Thanks all. Have a great day, and we'll meet back again tomorrow in the morning to learn the next part of our topics on our EC2 section and explore more on that. Bye all.